Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
So it's still very hot. It's still very hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it hot where you are too? I mean, the fires have just started out here really as well. Not as bad as last time, although I don't want to speak too soon. But
Right.
oof. It is really hot. The big difference this year, though, is that it's really wet. It's like, and by wet, I do not mean rainy. It is not raining at all. I mean humid. There's like a hurricane that's on this side of the earth coming up Mexico that has made it so humid in the air. And of course, being from such a humid city as Toronto, this is something I'm used to, but people in LA are very not used to it. And it's just making the heat wave much less bearable for sure. It is super, super hot. Like a bunch of stuff melted in my car yesterday. It's so hot.
Oh, damn. That really sucks. It's been hot here too. It was the first time all summer where I was like, oh, right, I don't have air conditioning, and I would like it. But things have been relaxed. But you're right. The humidity here too has been brutal. And I've had soccer games at 9:00 at night where we are drenched in sweat. And I have to say, like, now that it's finally hot and I'm experiencing these hot flashes pretty regularly because of my drugs and menopause, it sucks. In fact, as I'm talking, I'm having a hot flash. This sucks. I'm so hot. Anyway, whatever. It's the summer. It's hot. It's wildfire season. We got to get over it.
Do we have to get over it? I feel like we need to tear down the political structures that exist worldwide immediately to ensure our survival.
Yeah. No, for sure. But we also can't be like...
If that's what you meant by get over it, then I agree.
I meant like I cannot keep obsessing over checking Environment Canada's website to look at the weather. That's what I mean. I have to get over it.
But I mean, that's a time-honored Canadian pastime.
It is. I can do it once a day, though, not like 6 times a day. I don't need to track what the radar is saying because we're going to run out of radar soon because apparently that's getting cut by the federal government. So, yeah. It's it's hot. It's summer.
Turn to a tech billionaire to start a social media platform and algorithm based on the weather. And that way we could just have it fed into our eyeballs all the time. That'd be great. I'm going to go patent that idea. I'm going to move to Silicon Valley.
They do want that, don't they?
And make sure that someone takes that up. But oh my gosh, did you see the news? Did you see the news of everyone freaking out about this? I mean, this is kind of old news now about the AI that broke containment.
I did not. I don't even know what that is.
You didn't? Huh. Interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah, there's was it Claude Code, the people at Anthropic, which owns Claude Code, which is an artificial intelligence, large language model, whatever system. Were testing they're what they want to be their next release, I suppose, and they gave it some instructions, and part of its instructions were not to go on the internet to do this thing, and then it went on the internet to do the thing, and to pass the test, it broke into it hacked another company to pass this test.
Sure,
it hacked the company Hugging Face, and the only thing that's that I'm really taking away from this story is that no one knows how to talk about this yet. There's no consensus way to speak about this yet. And it means that what one can take away from this story is so hard, because basically you have half of the people who are reporting on this are this is the worst thing ever. that you would like give AI these parameters and it won't follow them and it'll just do what it wants. And it turns out that this is not the first time this has happened. We've gone back and we've looked and it's actually happened more than once. And it also turns out that the AIs are like teaching themselves how to do this. Like the AI is teaching other AI how to like break containment and this is so scary. This is terrible. And then the other half of the internet is like, or well, not internet, like reporters who are reporting on this are like, okay, hold the phone. We've spoken to some people and there's some things we should notice. One is that all of this information is coming from the companies themselves who have something to gain from making their products seem more effective than they are. And number two, it seems like these people just didn't turn off the internet. Like they could have just like created it, like this little system and like turned off its ability to get onto the internet. But instead of doing that, they just told it not to get onto the internet. So it's like, it's also like, why would you do that? Like, and so basically you have like these very competing stories. Some stories that are saying this is the worst thing ever, and other stories that are saying, don't trust these tech companies. This is not the worst thing ever by a long shot. And it's like, am I as a person not working in tech supposed to take from this? I think what I take from this is these tech companies are like really shitty and shouldn't keep getting tons and tons of our tax dollars. And we certainly shouldn't be, banking and gambling our entire future of our economy on this stuff. That's my takeaway.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good reminder, too, that like 100 years ago, when new technologies emerged, governments understood that they were very, very important and that they should have some control over them. And so while there were private companies operating in different fields like, transportation and telecommunications and shipping, the government always had its hands either through a direct company or through the law. And, the fact that there's no public discussion about how to democratize any of this stuff. There's no, we're just handing money to Cohere, right? Like we're just handing money to these companies, federal dollars, our tax dollars to these companies to do whatever they want with it. And there's no way for us to have any democratic control over how they operate, over what they research, over what they develop. Is it in the public interest? Is it in the interest of profits? Obviously, it's in the interest of profits because it's going to be unless they're directed to do it otherwise. So, yeah, I hate all of this. I also hate how everyone's saying Claude because I don't know what that is because, of course, in Quebec, that's pronounced Claude.
Yeah, that would be annoying for sure.
I'm always like, sorry, what? What did you say? What? It was like someone was telling me that they were bi the other day, except in French, it's just like, ah oui, elle est bi. I was like, bi what? What the hell does that mean? Oh, yeah, right. That's how that's pronounced in French, of course.
Hilarious. Well, anyway, from that little news story to some gratitude, maybe.
Oh my gosh, yes. The August winds come with them deep gratitude from Sandy and Nora. I think that was a haiku, if you sound out the syllables. Thank you so much to everybody that has supported the podcast in the last week. Share it. Tell all your friends. Spread the good word of Sandy and Nora. I have to say, whenever we talk to people, like at live shows or whatever, the people we talk to always have a story about how someone else got them into the podcast. And it is I just love that.
Me too.
So we do rely on you. Get your friends, your family members into the pod. But this week, thanks to the financial support to all new donors, Imad, Kate, Chris, Abra, and Anna. We love you. Thank you. And, Sandy, we've got some journalism that's on its way.
I was just about to say we had our first meeting last week with a team of folks that we hired thanks to your support. Thank you to everybody who donated on Chuffed to our journalism project, taking a look at how Zionist influences are impacting the state of Canadian media. It it's looking like it's going to be like a really great team and some really exciting reporting coming out of that. And I'm loving it. Are you loving it?
Mm-hmm. I'm loving it. The one thing is I wish that I'd had time. I mean, I'm on a summer schedule with kids home and I'm in and out of the house and I'm still trying to maintain things like the daily news. I meant to respond to everybody that applied to thank them for applying. And I just can't. I just don't have the time. And so that makes me feel really bad. Though if you applied and you didn't hear from us, you're probably like, okay, whatever. Certainly that's kind of how I am in those situations. But if you did apply, maybe at some point I'll be able to thank you for applying. But stay in touch and watch the progress and the stuff that comes out, because if we raise more money, we'll be able to keep doing this and maybe bring in some other people. We're just going to see how this snowballs into doing the journalism that you folks said that you wanted through your funding. So thanks for that. And we'll give you more updates as stories start to actually come out.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what are we talking about this week, Nora?
Well, we're going to go back to our roots. We're going to talk about the campus, but not just the campus.
Ooh.
Yeah. Did you see, Sandy? Bombshell report all over the headlines. There is a kind of hatred that is plaguing Canadian campuses. Do you know which one?
Oh my God. Is this a report that we put out? Because I do recall done reports like that. Such reports in our youth.
We did make a couple of reports in our youth. For people that, haven't followed like the work that we've done or the work that other groups have done that we've been involved in, we were involved in two big studies into hatred on campus. The first was the first study of its kind in Canada on Islamophobia. Never before had the phenomenon of Islamophobia been so articulated and studied. And that was a task. The study was called the Task Force on Islamia. No, what was it called? The Task Force on the Needs of Muslim Students.
Yes.
I was trying to fit Islamophobia in there, but that's right. No, the word wasn't even used so much that it wasn't even in the title of the task force. The Task Force on the Needs of Muslim Students came out in 2006, and it went campus to campus. I believe we had 22 hearings, and the hearings were open fora, discussion groups, events that all pulled out the experiences that students who were Muslim or who were perceived to be Muslim, so not necessarily Muslim at all, what kind of racism they were experiencing on campus. You can't do a study like that without kind of like looking at the broader structures. And so a couple of years later, we released the Task Force on Campus Racism. Now I'm getting mixed up because we also did the same thing at Ryerson. So what was it called? The Task Force on Campus Racism?
I actually think it was called the Task Force on the Needs of Racialized Students.
No, it was not.
Let me see. Hang on.
All I remember, it's like, we've got cobwebs in the brain.
Oh, no, you're right. It was the Task Force on Campus Racism. That's what we called it, the Task Force on Campus Racism.
Yeah, because we managed to grab the URL No Racism, which also is Nora-cism. Anyway. the 20-year-old mind that gets lodged into the 40-year-old brain. But Sandy, what do you remember from that task force?
Oh my goodness, a similarly large amount of hearings. I do remember going from campus to campus, having such heartbreaking conversations with students about the racism that they were experiencing both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And I remember at the time, this was at the time when like the language around microaggressions started to pop up and being really like, what is micro about this? I hate this new language. Still do. Still hate that language. Racism's just racism. And we created first of its kind report on recommendations that campuses of changes that campuses could make to root out racism on campus and to root out the systemic racism and individualized experiences of racism and how to address them. And they were pretty landmark reports. It was interesting because to see the differences between the ways that campuses would respond to those reports, and by campuses here, I mean administrations. Some administrations were like really grateful to get this type of information and to be able to have something to point to move forward with different policy and creation of maybe campus institutions to address what students were experiencing. We saw at that time too more spaces like multi-faith spaces and prayer spaces being created on campuses, which I think was a direct result of our work, and just making sure that our campuses reflected the diversity of the student body, but also like the world classness of Canadian campuses, which welcome students from all over the world. And then there were the campuses that were really like, this isn't a problem, and like really wanted to refuse engaging with any of the report, with the stories that students told, and wanted to refuse the idea that there was racism at all. And I recall that being a huge problem with the anti-racism report in particular. But yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking to hear the experiences and then to see some of the responses, such like irrational outrageousness coming from administration.
Yeah, I don't actually even remember getting much mainstream coverage on the first task force. Like, I was newer to the student movement then, but pretty involved. I remember being at several hearings, and I don't recall it getting that much mainstream pickup. It was very much a campus document, and armed with the recommendations that were developed thanks to the hearings that were held and the research that was done. As you say, many improvements were made on campus. But then I believe it was 2 or maybe 3 years later when the racism on campus report was released, that did get more coverage. And I don't remember if this was from the provincial report that we did or if it was from the Ryerson report that we did, because we did one specifically at, current Toronto Metropolitan University campus. But the Globe and Mail specifically wrote an editorial. It was written by somebody. I won't name them because I'm like, my mind is like 100% sure it was this person, but like, I'm not gonna go back and check, so I won't name them in case I'm wrong. But a columnist of the Globe and Mail literally had the headline, racism at Ryerson. If you don't look close enough, you'll miss it. Completely dismissing the idea that there could be racism on a campus like TMU's because it's so diverse, it's so downtown. And this was just a report that was trying to look for problems that didn't exist, even though you can read in the report, as you say, the heartbreaking experiences that people had while they were at school. Not to mention the report was triggered for us by a year of a series of increasingly violent things happening on campus to racialized students, mostly Black students. So this was the context for which that I remember this report was released. And it like for me as a white student from white Southern Ontario, I remember the process of the second report especially helped me understand concepts that I had not yet really understood. There would be comments about how white supremacy operated on campus that racialized students would make that I'd accept. I didn't say I don't see it, I don't believe you, but I didn't really understand how that then impacted their scholarship, their life on campus and this kind of thing. And that second report really, really allowed me to go, holy hell, these are real, these are institutions that really are based in white supremacy, and that white supremacy expresses itself in all of these different ways, in all of these different aspects of, campus life, from classes to after class to activities and clubs to hiring and firing and tenure and who was working in the mailroom and who was the president of the university and how it was governed and all this kind of thing. Yeah.
It was, these were quite interesting experiences. I do, ask us about it if you ever see us in person sometime to do these reports, because also when you do reports like that on the ground, people at that time, I don't know that this would happen today, like probably got really like threatened by the idea of even looking at racism and would sometimes try to stop us from doing that, which was like so bizarre. It was such a strange experience. But anyway, I like looking back at that, looking at how campuses are today, looking at the experiences that people had when setting up encampments to support Palestinian people, to oppose a genocide. When you say like that there was a big campus report, I'm like, well, those reports, they were great, but the job was not complete. So are you talking about a report on racism? Are you talking about a report on Islamophobia?
No, I'm talking about a report that made headlines in the past week that, listeners probably saw news of and maybe have even read it themselves. It's a news study that's paid for by the Government of Canada that is called the Campus Antisemitism and Student Experiences Study, or CASE. It was undertaken by Jack Jedwab from the Association for Canadian Studies and Metropolis Institute, and Paul Hawley from the same institute. So, a private company doing this research with a roster of advisors, none who seem to be students, which I think is very interesting. And this report specifically looks at anti-Semitism on campus. And as someone like you who has been involved in doing studies like this, it is quite the piece of state propaganda, which is too bad because they're talking about something that is serious and that does impact people. They conclude that 95.7% of people who responded had ever experienced or witnessed at least one instance of anti-Semitism over the past 12 months, though it doesn't say that that happened on campus in the findings, which is interesting. And there's a lot of examples, like kind of first-person voices of things that you would expect, different kinds of hatred, seeing anti-Semitic graffiti written. But then there's stuff like this. A student voice, quote, "Professor wrote that we should kill all Zionists." It's like, I bet. Like, what? Professor wrote that we should kill all Zionists, that she's worked with them and she sees how evil they are. And this report, it's actually quite a dangerous report because it not just conflates Jews with the state of Israel, but goes several steps further and conflates criticism of the state of Israel, a state that is currently engaged in genocide, which this report specifically denies, and lumps in anti-Semitism, which is hatred against Jews, to instead be a hatred against Jews and it's the definition from the IHRA, which activists will know includes criticism of the state of Israel. So they define Zionism like this. Zionism refers to the belief that Jewish people have the right to self-determination in part of their ancestral homeland, okay? And anti-Zionism as a movement that calls for the erasure of Israel and denies the Jewish people the right to self-determination in part of their ancestral homeland. It's kind of a stunning piece of propaganda that, as I say, I can't really believe has been funded by our tax dollars and that is doing so much work to justify what we're seeing, which is an increased criminalization and state repression against those of us who correctly criticize what Israel is doing.
There's a lot here. I paused a second ago earlier when you were reading the definition because I thought you were going to go ahead and read the next line because I think you should read the next line because it really is quite something. Those definitions that you read are really quite something, but I'm just going to go ahead and read the next line of the anti-Zionism definition. Just as a recap, you said anti-Zionism refers to a movement that calls for the erasure of Israel and denies the Jewish people the right to self-determination in part of their ancestral homeland. This case study goes on to say then scholarship defines anti-Zionism as, it doesn't say what scholarship, okay? It's just scholarship. Scholarship defines anti-Zionism as relying on, quote, libel and distortion to claim that the Jewish collective, Israel, rather than the individual Jew, is uniquely evil. It further asserts that Jews, who have thousands of years of history in this place, are fabricating a legitimate claim to their ancestral homeland. Anti-Zionism claims that Israel, exceptionally, is the one state that must be eradicated.
It's like, how many? Oh, okay, sorry. I want you to take apart the first part of the definition, but it's like, sorry, no anti-Zionist that I know has a sole fixation on Israel as the only state in the world that isn't legitimate. Not one of them. Every single anti-Zionist that I know understands the problem of settler colonial countries like our own, like Canada, and is fully on board with a transformation of what this colonial society looks like to be actually decolonized and no longer look like the Canada that we have today. But anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, like the continued looking away from like all anti, like whether it's anti Jim Crow segregation, anti-apartheid, like oppressive movements when we're talking about settler colonial states. It's like, come on, like, what are we doing? But that first line, I mean, that might be anti-Semitic in itself in this definition of this like government report. Libel and distortion to claim that the Jewish collective Israel, rather than the individual Jew, is uniquely evil. I mean, am I bad at English, or are they rather than the individual Jew? What are they doing there in that sentence? This is very, very strange, perhaps written by AI, who knows? That just seems like such a strange thing to throw in here. When I first saw this, when this came across, I get emails from Canadian Heritage. So like, this came across my in my email inbox, and it was like, the big headline was like 97% of Jewish students experience anti-Semitism on campus, and this is coming from the government of Canada. My first reaction was just like, wow, very stunning, that the government is doing this sort of exploration. Not necessarily a bad thing. I've just never seen them do that before. I've been doing anti-racism work in Canada my whole adult life. And Nora, I've never seen the government take this kind of experience so seriously. And like some of the stuff that, just to give people an idea, some of the stuff that we were uncovering on campus when talking about racism was like campus cops going after Black students in a semi-regular way when they're like in the library studying, to be like, do you belong here? Like that kind of stuff. And these systemic ways that like even what you can study on a Canadian campus, okay? Like being able to study like in international schools, like global affairs schools, being able to study Africa, or being able to graduate in 4 years if you decide to focus on the Caribbean, that not being possible because schools weren't offering those courses every year. Like that's the kind of thing that we were raising. And the government never took that seriously, like let alone a lot of the campuses. So I was like, this is fascinating to see that the government now finally sees that this is their work. But is that what they're seeing, Nora?
No. And already lots of groups and academics have totally torn into this report. It's not a weighted survey. The responses were pushed out through groups that have a political interest in making sure that the responses said that they said. And so it doesn't really pass many of the musters of what is considered, proper scholarship, I guess, to use their words. But I think it's very interesting that in the definitions, which is really important because the definitions are, if we're going to define what hatred is, you have to define what the definition of hatred is, and you have to be all on the same page, right? It's one thing for you to use an example of police going after, trying to charge or even hurting Black students on campus. It's another thing entirely to say that I was pressured to go to a Palestinian solidarity protest is a form of anti-Semitism, which is an example in this report. But in that definition of anti-Zionism, they talk about scholarship says, right? They have a footnote to a report that they're relying on for these definitions. And the report that they refer to was prepared by something called the Network of Engaged Canadian Academics, or NECA. And it's a faculty network of 400 Jewish and non-Jewish members to promote academic freedom, research excellence, and intellectual pluralism to counter anti-Semitism. The professors listed are actually, one of them is one of the advisors into this study. So he's just self-referencing. And this is a brief prepared for the Senate. The Senate, okay? So this is like manufacturing terms here and giving these terms legitimacy that can then be referenced by lawyers and judges as they make decisions. They take their definition like literally directly, lifted line by line from this report. And they argue that because groups like Independent Jewish Voices represent what they say is the 1% of Jews who are not Zionist, which also dubious statistic, never actually been demonstrated to be true in any way at all, that they are marginal and really don't actually represent any Jews at all in Canada. And so the true people that represent Jews, I guess, is this group of academics, the NECA. It's a real problem. And if you look at who they cite, they cite far-right people and far-right websites as being where they're getting their information from. So like this one piece from The Hub written by one guy, Kogan, who's one of the overseers of the case study for Heritage Canada, but then also this guy, Adam Lewis Klein, who, if you're online at all, he's probably called you a rapist. He's probably called you a genocide supporter, a racist, all because he's this random McGill PhD student who, I don't know why, but came out of nowhere and has been the person trying to redefine what anti-Zionism is so that it can fit into a definition of anti-Semitism. This report is very, very, very short. And these are the people that are underlying the intellectual, theoretical framework of this federal study. And in this brief, this isn't just a brief with definitions. They're actually asking the Senate to do something. They want the Senate to recognize the threat that anti-Zionism poses to Canadian Jewish community and to democratic values. Oh my God. They want the Senate to give no support to anti-Zionist organizations to marginalize Jewish civic life. I don't even know what that means. They want the Senate to ensure that institutions, including Canadian media, and especially the CBC, abide by fair journalistic standards and ensure balance in the reporting and accurate reporting of the views of the majority of the Jewish community, including about Israel and the Gaza war. AKA, they do not want anti-Zionist perspectives ever reported by the CBC because that wouldn't be balanced by their definition if 99% of Jews in Canada are Zionists, which again, there's no proof of that here either. And they want the Senate to ensure that human rights are being enforced equitably to protect Jewish people in Canada who are experiencing an explosion of anti-Semitism, and to recommend that the operating definition of anti-Palestinian racism, which calls Jewish identity inherently racist, No, it does not. B, definitively rejected by the government of Canada, and to assist universities in Canada in their efforts to address anti-Jewish hate, including all forms of antisemitism and especially anti-Zionism, which has become embedded systemically in Canadian post-secondary education.
Wow. Fascinating. I also think it's like interesting to note. I mean, you did point out earlier that there's no students on the what are they calling it? A working committee, the advisory board to this report. And just randomly, there's this there's a market research and brand organization called Brand Spark International.
Yeah.
Seems strange. Robert Levy, who's like the president of Brand Spark International, which is it's a strategic branding organization, which I mean, okay, that seems like an odd choice to have over students in this report. The other thing that I think is really interesting is as I was looking through some of the footnotes, did you see this footnote number 15?
No.
I'm going to read you footnote number 15 because I think it's interesting. So I'm going to read where the footnote comes from, and then I'll go back. Okay, so the footnote is in section 2.2 of the report, which talks about toxic classroom dynamics, and they're talking about the reports that students have made of quote, instances of demonization, delegitimization, and disinformation regarding Israel. Nora, it seems like this report has a lot to do with Israel and not with anti-Semitism. But in any case, there's one quote that says, one professor of medicine reportedly told students that, quote, if we support Israel and don't denounce the genocide, we would not be good doctors / don't belong. And it goes on to say that these examples of classroom politicization for the purposes of anti-Zionist indoctrination are among the most worrying of the case findings. Okay, so the footnote is on the word genocide. Okay, so the footnote on the word genocide as spoken by the student themselves. And the footnote says, no court, international or otherwise, has determined that the war in Gaza, and that's capitalized, okay? The war in Gaza is a genocide. This isn't a Canadian heritage government report, Nora.
Wow, I did read that. That's wow. Wow. Remind us, is that true?
No, that is not true. That is really, really stunning that's just put there. But also, I don't know if what they're doing there is really leaning on the word courts and trying to suggest the ICC is making its determination, but certainly commissioners and I believe other countries' courts have decided that it is it's a genocide. So this is I don't know, are they saying that they don't see those courts as legitimate, let alone the numerous reports and international bodies that have determined and confirmed that this is a genocide? It's just unbelievable to see that written in a Canadian government report.
It is unbelievable. And, one of the things that I think is just so stunning is then, this then just gets completely lapped up by journalists as if it's legitimate. As if CBC's management read that Senate briefing from 2025 and was like, okay, yeah, we're going to cover it in this way. There's an article by Peter Ziminich at CBC about this report. There is absolutely no criticism to it at all. It even quotes a guy who is a charlatan and who like came to Canada out of nowhere. A guy, Joe Roberts, people have heard of this person, has questionable connections to Judaism actually in the first place, and then fled Canada because he thought that fascist United States was safer for him. Anyway, it includes examples like this. A student said a woman and her gender studies professor gave her 0% on an assignment because it had addressed sexual assaults by Hamas on Jews during the October 7th, 2023 attack. And it's like a 0? You received a 0? That seems very strange, but okay, maybe. The student said the heart of the incident was that the professor told them to instead focus on Israel's police role in the sexual assaults. It's like, that's not anti-Semitism at all. Like, that's a political disagreement if it actually happened, which we have no way of knowing because of the way that the study was actually undertaken. And again, this is in CBC now. This isn't just a government funded thing. Now we've got the media promoting it. And they quote the guy that did the report, Jack Jedwab, saying this, quote, "There's no qualifiers for this anti-Semitism. There's no adjectives. There's no pretext for it," unquote. And that's it. And Zimonjic doesn't add the pretext or the qualifiers or the adjectives that are there. Of course there are. What are you talking about, Jedwab? Like, this is such a dangerous thing. And to do a study and to release a study on anti-Semitism on campus in August, at the beginning of August, not even when the school year is in, very curious. I have a theory as to why they did that. And I think to myself, like, you know, I wear a keffiyeh every time I go out, unless it's the summer, it's just too hot, I don't wear scarves. I've been wearing a keffiyeh for 13 or 14 years. I've only ever experienced one like hostile moment with my keffiyeh on, and it was actually at Queen's University. I was on campus to speak about pandemics, and a student walked up to me and yelled at me and then ran away like a little coward. And I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? I was with other people and they're like, wow, you just got Zioed. And I was like, oh, there's a word for it here. Very interesting. There is a context to all of this. And I don't know, Sandy, like trying to create a world on campus where anti-Zionism now is a hate crime. Like, what do you think the fall is going to look like now that they've had, like, they'll have had 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks for this propagandistic report to percolate in the minds of the people that run our campuses to then what? What are they going to do with a first sign of a Palestinian solidarity protest or the first shirt that says Free Palestine, or God forbid a shirt that says Israel kills children, which, by the way, they are doing that every single day, according to a new UNICEF report. Okay, yeah, like the thing that's, I mean, that's just the crux of it, isn't it? Like, this is as you say, a piece of propaganda that gives campuses coverage to go after pro-Palestinian, anti-genocide activists on campus who are simply using what free speech we should have in this country to say, we don't think that an entire people should be eliminated by a state. We don't think that people should be subject to the violent forms of settler colonialism that Israel has been enacting on Palestinian people. Like that is what this report is. Like there's nothing wrong with a report on anti-Semitism, but this is not a report on anti-Semitism, actually. This is a report that provides cover for actions that support Zionism on campus. And the thing about that, having experienced being on campus and what that looks like already, is that there's already a lot of institutional support for protecting Zionism on campus. And long before
long, long before the campus protests of the last couple of years. And like, what am I talking about? I mean, when we were on campus, if there was ever like a speaker who was going to speak about Palestine at all, the creation of Israeli Apartheid Week on campuses, like these were major flashpoints where campus administration would really, really clamp down on having these events, prevent them from happening sometimes, make sure that there was heavy campus police presence at these events. And again, at times like these events just couldn't happen at all. And I don't think that we need to go over all of the violent ways, the violence that students who were a part of the encampments, the kind of violence that they experienced from the campus community. So there's already a lot of support. I mean, like all of these bubble bylaws that came out, like even off of campus, the bubble bylaws that prevent protests from happening within a certain amount of a certain distance from schools, churches, and synagogues, and so on. Like these policies that are really clamping down on our civil liberties, that are in an effort to support and protect Zionism and to prevent people from being able to have a public political position against settler colonialism, against genocide, and against Zionism, which are all legitimate opinions to have that are not anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, on campus, I remember in the 2010s when hateful white supremacists, like outwardly white supremacist organizing started happening on campus that had to do with trying to make racialized students uncomfortable, Black students uncomfortable, indigenous students uncomfortable. And uncomfortable is the wrong word, like trying to make it so that these students did not feel as though they could be on campus without experiencing some sort of challenge to their personhood. And Jewish students, okay? Like these white supremacist groups, these white pride groups that were propping up were actually anti-Semitic. And we did not get that kind of response to protect students from either the administration or anyone taking them seriously. I remember as we were experiencing things like rocks being thrown through our windows and stuff, like, because this stuff got really violent at the University of Toronto, being told, like, these are just people on Reddit who have found each other, and it's kind of a joke. And the way to get to respond to something like that is to not take it seriously and to just ignore them, which, I mean, it's 2026 with clear hindsight. I don't know if we can look back and say ignoring white supremacists is the way to make them go away. But like, there's real shit happening, Nora. There's like real hateful shit happening, which this report does not address and desperately needs addressing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of instances in the report of people saying, like, there was like, Hitler was right. Hitler should have, like, I support Hitler, all this kind of thing. Like things that are very, very, very white supremacist coded, right? Like that is what the white supremacists do. And when in 2006, I was the target of white supremacists. I mean, looking at their, I was the subject of many chat boards over at Stormfront. They were sure I was Jewish. And that was basically the thread under why they needed to silence me and they needed me to run me off campus. And when I went to student services to be like, okay, like they're coming at me at my campus office, like what am I supposed to do here? Literally the only advice that I got, two pieces of advice, I guess. One was, walk a different path home and to work every day or to school every day, just change your path. And then the second was that if I was going to be chased by someone, I should be prepared to get my shoe off and throw it through a window to try and make a commotion so people could see me. Campuses have never taken white supremacist organizing seriously. And there's no question that is a threat to Jewish students, as it's a threat to trans students, as it's a threat to Black students, as it's a threat to immigrant students, as it's a threat to other racialized students. Like, there's no question about that. You'd think that a report into anti-Semitism would mention this. It does not. It does not. This is, and the Ziminuk piece in the CBC says that this is actually the first of 2 reports. It's like, what the hell is the second report going to say? This is literally giving judges, lawyers, politicians the cover that they need to arrest people who are critical of Israel and to say, look, this is actually a hate speech. This applies to under Canada's hate speech laws. It is dangerous. It's a disgusting attack on free speech. I am so disgusted by seeing Barbara Perry's name there, misspelled though, by the way. But Barbara Perry is one of the few experts on far right extremism in Canada, and somehow she's misspelled a member of the advisory committee. But this is so disgusting, and we see what you are doing, all in the service of this foreign government that wants to eradicate people. And I think, like, where it comes into the sharpest focus is, it's like, you're a Palestinian student on campus. Like, are you literally not allowed to say, I'd like my home back from this settler in the West Bank? No, because actually they have a right to parts of their ancestral homeland, and Canada hasn't really done anything to say that we oppose. I mean, the sanctions are kind of just a name only of a couple of people. We haven't sanctioned Israel for allowing the annexation of the West Bank. I mean, Lebanese students, are they not allowed to say that they deserve to live in Lebanon, where Israel's been attacking them? I mean, this is where things are really, really clearly propagandistic and dangerous.
And dangerous. And the other thing is, it's like, it's so important that you bring that up, because I recall when we were doing this work ourselves on campus, one of the ways that this sort of thing, the sort of systemic racism, the institutional forms of racism were coming up, was this like inattentiveness to what was happening in certain students' homelands, and that having an impact on how they were experiencing their education. And so in particular, at that time, the genocide against Tamils in Sri Lanka was at one of its highest points. There was a lot of action and activity against that genocide in the city of Toronto in particular, but there were actions across the world. And we noted that, students would say to their professors, to the school, like, I can't focus. I don't know if my family is alive. I need some sort of accommodation. And it was being refused in a lot of cases. Like, they were like, we need you to go get a death certificate or something like that, in order to have some sort of leniency for this exam. And it was like, you don't understand. This is a genocide. I am not going to be able to get a death certificate. How could that be the response? And that was some of what we were seeing on campuses when we published that report in, when was it, 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And now, I mean, like, in terms of the things that the government really needs to be paying attention to as part of all of this, like, I really do think it's critical. You're mentioning Lebanese students, you're mentioning Palestinian students. Are those questions about how those students are experiencing their education at this current moment, is that a part of what campuses are paying attention to? Is that a part of what the government also sees as their role when it comes to post-secondary education, and how what Israel is doing in all of these countries is impacting students here in Canada?
I guess the question always, though, is on what side is our government of these conflicts? And frankly, they do not care about the side that they're not allied with. And so for students who might be experiencing psychological trauma because of what their families are experiencing, wherever they're from, I mean, the government doesn't actually care unless it aligns with its interests. And this is why it is so potent and so destructive to see Canada and Israel's interests be so aligned, while at the same time manufacturing consent for what anti-Semitism means today, which is actually not anti-Semitism. It's actually just criticizing a foreign state, which, newsflash, we all have the right to do.